Good morning. It's time to tan hides again. I'm just getting suited up here. This is video number 7 in this tanning series, which is just me strapping on an action cam and tanning hides. But the good thing is that we get to run into real problems, you know, as they happen, and solutions and all the talking points that they bring up. So what we're going to do today is take the strip of cattle hide we have here, and we're going to put that into the bark liquor. I have 3 batches of bark liquor. I cooked the same bark 3 times. This is 1, 2, and the third one I haven't dumped out yet. We're going to stir these hides and check them out. So these are the 4 sheep hides and 1 squirrel in here. Let's pull one of these out and throw it on the beam. If you've been following this series, you will probably remember these as being quite a bit different color last time we looked at them. Well, I'm trying to find the neck here. I'm lost. Wait, no, that's not the neck. Might be the butt. Oh no, there's the neck. So our color is evened out quite a bit, but there's still some unevenness here, and that's, you know, just mostly at least because the hides can't be, you know, manipulated and stirred constantly. So anywhere, like, so I put this in the tan, and it ends up like this, you know, inevitably, and no tan liquor can get in here. So the little bit that's in there does a little tanning, and then it's on hold, basically, until the hide gets moved. So that's why you have to stir hides. Also, as many will recall, we had some weird spots on the hide that I think were probably alum contamination, aluminum sulfate. And those and other like subtle chemical differences could also cause, you know, unevenness of color and discolorations. When you're doing home tanning, unless you really go out of your way, you're likely to have some unevenness. Like if I went through my batches of hides, I don't think that many of them will appear as uniform as like a commercial hide will. And this just, you know, it's because we have a certain set of problems as home tanners. Now, someone suggested in the comments on the last video that one possibility would be to hang the hides in a solution. And yes, that does work. I've done it. I've done it in like a big plastic barrel with a whole horse hide cut into 4 long strips. But then, you know, they're narrow enough to fit. It's too wide for a barrel. So now we need some kind of special container. You know, the average like big round plastic barrel is about 66 gallons, I think. And that is a lot of tan liquor. So we're talking about filling that with at least 50 gallons of tan liquor. And that tan liquor has to be strong enough, right? So it's not just like there's so much room in that barrel unless we really pack it full of hides that we're going to have more tannin in there, like a lot more than we need just to keep the strength of the solution up. Then we have this problem of sizing the hides to the size of the container. So for these hides, for instance, if I had something that was like 18 inches wide, or like maybe a foot wide or 18 inches wide and rectangular, like a tank, like a rectangular tank that was just the right size, and I could hang these in there, who has that, right? I mean, this is just kind of what you have to deal with. Is you're usually going to end up tanning in tubs. I've tanned cattle hide like this in half wine barrels, you know, something more like this size. But all of that is attended with, you know, various problems that you have to deal with. And the worst of those is probably the fact that the hides get folded on themselves. So here's another one. Again, same thing, kind of uneven color. I think that will even out more still. But as I said in the last video, the first solution was a very different color than the second solution. So it's not going to even all the way out because, how do I describe it? Parts of these hides, most of them, were mostly tanned on the outside with a lighter colored solution, right? So then the spots that were less tanned, when they went into this darker solution, which is a much darker, richer red color, and not that kind of bright red color, they tanned with the darker solution, and so we're necessarily going to get some of that mottling just as I predicted. But I do think they'll even out some more. So I hope you guys can see this, but there's definitely some weirdness here with like some speckling and mottling that looks weird. That may be one of those spots that I think was alum contaminated. It's hard to say though. You'll get weird things happening and you're just like, what is that and where did it come from? Like this here, this is weird here. So I think this is one of those spots actually, because listen. You hear the difference? So some of those did survive all the rinsing and scudding, and they are discolored, again, as predicted. Okay, so what else to say about these hides? They're much more like leather now. This solution that I put them in, the new solution, in, I think 2 days, has thickened them a lot and tanned them a lot to the point where they're really starting to feel more like leather and less like this kind of floppy rawhide. So let's go ahead and cut off a little section of this neck and find out how deep the tan has penetrated. Okay, so here we go. There's still a long way to go. It's just like a pretty thin line on the two outsides of the skin. But even that has affected the character of the skins quite a bit. But these have a long way to go. People ask too, like, how do you know when it's tanned? If you're cutting it like this, it will be a fairly even color all the way to the center. But it won't necessarily be completely even, and you can always leave it in the tan as long as the tan is strong enough to preserve. You can leave it in the tan extra to see what it'll take up. Now, a problem that happens, and I've seen this a lot with new tanners, is they'll end up using a weak solution. In the last video, I showed a solution that looked like it still had color, but it was totally used up. Like the tannin was, close enough to completely used up to be considered completely used up. But they'll leave it in because it still has color, and it looks like it still has stuff in it, and it'll sit there for months, and it will still look like that. Now, eventually, some of the coloring matter that's in there that's not tannin, or some weak tannin that's in there, will get into the skin and get to the center of the skin. So someone just left a comment about that who used black walnut. Okay, black walnut is a perfect example, the black walnut hulls, of a material that is high in coloring matter and low in tannin. So essentially what he did is he dyed the skin all the way through eventually. But then when he dried the skin, it's just hard and brittle because it's basically rawhide. It's not actually tanned, it's just dyed. So, assuming that your tan is strong enough and that you're keeping the strength up, and you'll start to get a feel for that over time, then you want to see an even color basically through a thick part of the skin where you cut off at least 3/4 of an inch or something. Usually that's going to be the neck. And if it's done, unless I'm in a hurry, typically I'm going to leave it in for at least another week or two. Again, assuming that there's still plenty of tannin in the solution. And we're going to throw all these back. Okay, so the other thing about this solution right now is that I'm not going to make it too strong. And I can dump the rest of whatever I have in here. Oh yeah, so there were these weird pieces of turkey skin in here. I'm just going to leave them in and throw them in with the sheep hides. I don't see any reason not to. And we're just going to, let's see, let's just dump it all in. That's better too, because it gives the hides a little more room to swim around. They're less likely to float up and poke their heads above the surface. Someone else suggested a small pump, like a fish pump, to keep the liquor and the hides moving. We have two problems: keeping the liquid moving so that it just moves through the hides more, and the more it moves through the hides, the more it tans and the quicker. But also we have the folds problem. So it would have to be a really strong pump to be pushing the hides around in here. Again, if you sized it big enough, maybe if it was the right shape, possibly. I think it would be a pretty substantial pump, though, to really keep the hides moving and undoing the folds, Again, if that could happen periodically and not just run 24/7, like if you could have a timer that would kick on and it would pump the hides for like 1 minute or something like that, sure. But, now we're just getting into all kinds of complicated solutions that aren't going to work for most people. And if you're going to go there, you might as well just get a front-loading washing machine and modify it or something. Okay, so what we need this tub for is bark tanning the big cattle hide. And so I got to get all this lime out and clean it out real well because we don't want lime in our bark liquor. Unless your soils are already very alkaline, like you have a limestone soil or for whatever other reason, this is very valuable. It's a bunch of lime that's charged with nitrogen, minerals, all kinds of, dissolved substances from the hide that plants like. It got what plants crave. So I'll take this out and dump it on some fruit trees. So this is a good candidate. It's just a piece of rootstock that grew back after the top died, and I'm going to graft this year to one of my seedlings that I grew from seed. One of my new apple varieties, I haven't decided which one yet, but it's probably going to be Cherub, the red flesh crab apple. And seriously, how exciting is that? And let's throw some lime under Frankentree here. People that have been around my channel for a long time are very familiar with Frankentree. Had 150 varieties of apples on it at one time. Now I'm down to about 100, or was it 108? I can't remember. I counted them again. But, you know, stuff dies. A bunch of stuff I cut off because I didn't like it. And this is a more reasonable amount of varieties to have on this tree. It's still a little crowded. One of my favorite things I ever wrote was this essay called Applehead on my blog. And in there I'm talking about how generous, you know, apple trees are with so little care. And one of the lines is something like, we can throw filth and waste on its roots and it grows all the more, or something like that. And it's so true. You know, with so little attention and care, if they're planted in a good spot, they just dump good things on us with literally stuff that we don't want at all thrown, you know, on the ground under them. Except, of course, if you're a farmer or gardener and then you actually see these things as resources, and they really are. Part of the reason I want to do this big micro tannery project is to not only work on the tanning and the different types of leather we can make, but actually using all of these resources that come out of the back end of a tannery that are extremely valuable and can be parts of, like, you know, supporting other industries and other endeavors, and not just used as a waste product, because tanneries are notoriously polluting, including some of the traditional tanneries, not just the chemtan, although chemtan's a lot worse. But they would, you know, take so much water that they would set up near streams and just dump all this crap right into the river, you know, fleshings and all the nasty liquors and everything like that. This is like lime scale. It's carbonized lime. So the lime in the solution is calcium hydroxide, and when that dries, it turns into calcium carbonate, which is what we know as limestone, shells, marble, chalk, all the same thing, calcium carbonate. And it's kind of hard to get off. I can take some pulpy apple vinegar stuff I have over there. Like, I have a big tub of vinegar that's like a bunch of just vinegarized rotten apples. If I put that pulp on here and leave it for one day, that stuff will just fall off. So I may do that, but that doesn't solve a problem right now of needing a tub that's not contaminated with lime. So I'm going to look to that tub right there. Is it wide enough? That's the question. I didn't think it was wide enough, which is why I wasn't using it. Now, if you're thinking I could put those hides in this tub and put the cattle hide in that tub, which is the same size as the wide one, the reason I already thought of that, the reason I don't want to do that is because that solution is ropey, like it's got that snotty thing going. And I've seen that in tan liquors before, and I never noticed that it caused any problems or changes good or bad. But I still don't want to inoculate my new boiled bark liquor with that. Like, if I wanted it to be ropey, I would actually inoculate it with that. So that's exactly what I would be doing. I'm just not sure how wide this hide is. That's not bad. It does fold up a little. The thing I like about this tub is that it is smaller, so I'm not going to have to use as much liquor. So let's go ahead and use this. Okay, so this is actually the third cook. I decided to cook it a third time. You know, it looks kind of weak. I mean, it looks thick and dark, but a lot of that is sediment. But there's definitely a bunch of tannin in this third cook, so I'm glad I cooked it again. In fact, I might just cover this bark with water and let it sit. And then I can drain that and use it to cook the next batch of liquor that I make. So then I'm really getting almost everything out. Yeah, so, you know, until I need this pan or need to cook another batch, why not just put some water on it and see what comes out. Okay, look how weak that is. This is cook number 3. I want you to take a look at that compared to the next one we're going to pour in. Okay, so when we look at these two, you know what? I'm going to go get some little jars, and I'm going to fill a little jar with each of these 3 solutions so we can take a closer examination. Half a cup of that, half a cup of batch number 2, and half a cup of batch number 1. And we will take a look at those in the light presently. I just heard the very first turkey of the season gobble for spring mating. Okay, this is cook number 2. So this is the second strongest, considering like it would be definitely safe to start the hides in this, at least with my oak bark. If you have a really strong solution of some species, it can shock the hide and do something called case hardening, which it kind of freezes the hide up and it shrinks it too much. It's like a chemical burn almost. So in some cases you want to dilute, but remember that I'm diluting this by half. I think with any material, a second cook and a third cook mixed together should be a great starter solution. Now this is way more than enough to keep the hide in without having it float really easily, which is good. There's a lot of tannin in here. When I put my hands in this, they pucker. I can feel the astringency on my hands. The more this is moved, the more evenly it's going to tan. I have to go out and drop off some mail at the mailbox and pick some stuff up. We'll get back to this later today. Did you hear that turkey? I don't know when the season opens, but it's not in February, it's in March. But I just rebuilt my Airgun, but I want to show you that because what I did to this stock is really cool. Yeah, so I broke a seal on this Airgun and I had to repair it. I've had it for a long time. You know, it's over 10 years old, so I guess. So I had to take take the whole thing apart, and while I had it off, I was looking at this stock, and it's like a really cheap stock. It was poorly finished. It's some kind of like semi-hard wood that's really light colored, like almost like a light blonde. And it had this like really thin, cheap stained varnish on it. So anywhere it would get scratched, it's just all this like white wood showing through and stuff. And I just thought it was really ugly looking. So I just took a torch and just burned everything off. And that's one of the things I like about burning, is it just kind of evens everything out. And if there's like some kind of varnish or some crap, I mean, if it's like a thick paint, I'm not going to sit there and burn it off and breathe it or anything. But this is just like a thin varnish. Torch it off. If there's tool marks, unevennesses of any kind, it just kind of evens everything out, and it's so fast. And then I just brushed it with a brass brush, threw some oil on it, and it looks super cool now. I kind of hit this with a little sandpaper just real quick to bring out some of these red highlights, but yeah, it looks neat now. So yeah, I killed a lot of turkeys with this gun. It's a 22 caliber air rifle. You have to take headshots. Like, do not try to shoot a turkey in the body with this. It will run away, and you probably won't ever find it. So you got to get them pretty close, but calling helps. You know, if I know they're headed in a certain direction, I'll run up and try to head them off and just wait for them. But usually I end up calling them in and just wait for them to stop bobbing their heads long enough or make like a little sound, and they turn and look. Yeah, it's deadly though. This thing's pretty effective. Lots of squirrels, quail, turkeys have been put in the pot with this gun, which is Benjamin Discovery. Kind of cheaply made in a lot of ways. Definitely the fit and finish is really crude, but hey, it works. Okay, one more thing I forgot about. Let's try to clean this tub out with some of this apple vinegar slime. I mean, this stuff is extremely acidic. Look, here's the mother. This is the vinegar mother. So this is the stuff that you use as a starter to put into new cider to make vinegar. So if I take this pulp, this is a trick I made up with just household vinegar. You can mix it with things like flour, any kind of like thing that's going to make it into a paste. And then you can put it onto lime scale and leave it. The problem is if you just kind of wipe some vinegar on, it runs off. So you need to hold it there and keep it wet for a while so it has time to work. And the scale is only from here up because this, all this was full of liquor, and it only happens when the lime dries. This is where, like, as the level dropped, it left the sediment and that dried on there. So if I try to put this up here, I just don't think it's going to work, but I'm going to go ahead and wipe everything with this and just hoping that it'll start to break it down a little. But I think we'll have to do like one side at a time by turning it like this. And again, we don't want it to dry out because then it won't work anymore. Okay, it's been about an hour or less, I would say. And wow, look at the color already. You can see the unevenness as expected. So when I put this back, I'm going to accordion fold it the same way, but I'm going to do it in the opposite direction. So, you know, was this what was whatever, you know what I mean. I'm going to lay it the opposite direction each time. And if I do this every hour, I think it'll turn out pretty even for a while. Like, I need to do it, you know, enough times and late, you know, into the evening preferably. So part of it depends on how strong the liquor is. This liquor seems to be coloring very fast. The sheep hides went into a relatively weak liquor, and this is a relatively strong starting liquor. So hopefully we'll get the whole outer surface tanned quickly. So we'll keep coming back and checking on this through the day. It's obviously pretty weak, different color like brown, more red, but look at this one, high density, more red. I was turning all handles on my lathe today, and every couple of handles, when I finished a handle, I would just come down here and turn this. So I've actually turned it a lot today, and probably an average of every 20 to 30 minutes. And the color is actually looking pretty even. Now there are some spots on this that are weird, that are going to come out a little different color. But overall, the color is looking pretty even on this. And I'll try to keep that up for the rest of the day. Look at this gorgeous spalted maple right here. Super nice. That's going to make gorgeous awl handles. The spalted maple is so cool. But that piece that's on there right now is going to be the best. Look at that. So we're at the tail end of day one of this cattle hide in the solution. Let's put it up on the beam and take a look at it. And it looks good. You know, it looks pretty even. There's definitely some unevenness. So again, that's kind of to be expected. But during the first half of the day, I probably moved it an average of every 20 to 30 minutes for quite a while. I can't imagine I moved it less than about a dozen times, so maybe 12 to 15 times during the day, and it's looking good. There are some other, you know, miscellaneous dark spots and stuff like this. Those were already kind of showing up before it went in the tan, so I don't know what those are. There's so many things that can happen, like little things that can get on the skin. You know, at some point this was soaking the lime, and the lime drained out, and it had been, you know, above the surface of the liquor, so that could definitely cause some discoloration. But overall, it's looking gorgeous, and this is going to make some really nice leather. But that's a long way off. For now, we're going to put it back in here. So if we kind of pick this up, try to take a look at it. It's real cloudy. There's a lot of sediment, so it's kind of hard to tell what's going on with that. But I don't really feel a need to strengthen it right now. I think I'll let it sit overnight first. One thing I'll do sometimes is try to get like the hide to use up a whole bunch of the tannin, like most of the tannin in the solution, and I'll leave it for even like a few extra days. And the solution's getting weak, really weak, so that I can dump some of it out. Let's say I don't want to just keep getting more and more liquid by continually adding, then I want to get the solution really weak before I dump it out. But we'll talk more about that as this tanning proceeds. But it's looking great, and that's going to be some really nice, very useful leather. We're going to stir this. You know what's hilarious though? I just realized I totally forgot to stir these all day. Oh, my brain's weird. These are mostly colored up, and there's not as much reason to stir them. Pretty soon I'll be stirring them, you know, once a day or less, even probably. Knowing me, a lot less. But, you know, it would have been good if I stirred them all day today, too. I mean, why not, if I was already stirring that hide? I just want to keep poking at this until everything's down. Sometimes the floaty spots are, you know, air bubbles that are coming up, so it helps to keep pushing on those to try to get the air out. But either way, you don't want stuff floating above the liquor. So it's day 2. I haven't checked on the cattle hide yet, but I just wanted to get on this project because I forgot to deal with it yesterday. The lime scale that was under here should just be gone. See, it's just completely dissolved. If you might remember, I just kind of took some of this mash and rubbed it over these parts because I thought maybe it would start working. And look, it was actually enough to dissolve it, or close. I think I'm still going to go ahead and turn this and do the same thing. And I could just use this pulp over. Like, I don't have to scrub it at all. This is just going to completely dissolve it. And I'll just turn it like that. Okay, so I left this in like early evening or late afternoon yesterday. Walked off, and this is the first time it's been opened since then. Let's throw it on the beam and see what we can learn from what it looks like. And what it looks like is the color's very even. Okay, so what this tells us is what I've been trying to say, which is that once you get the outside surfaces tanned evenly, then they're just done. It's that initial period of time when the skins are folded up, if you don't move them enough, that you get that mottling. Now that this is all evened out, I can leave it for longer periods of time, and it's not going to have this problem, or very little of it, of becoming like real mottled and uneven in color. So it's looking beautiful. We're going to take a look at our liquor right here. Okay, to me this is clearly weaker than it was. It's not totally spent out or anything. And I think I'm going to leave it in here for a couple of days and see, well, for as long as I want to see how it progresses and how much it weakens. And again, sometimes what I'll want to do is just use this up, because I don't want to just keep dumping stuff in. I want to keep the strength of the solution up. So what's going to make a stronger solution? If I dump a whole nother bucket of concentrate in here with this liquor, or dump some of this liquor out just enough and then add some concentrate, right? So that brings the total strength up, and I don't have this phenomenon of just continually building the amount of liquid, because if the amount of liquid is very high, then obviously you have to add more to get the same concentration. So I'm going to go with that approach for now. If I were in a big hurry and I wanted to get this tanned, I would either dump some concentrate in right now, or dump some of it out and just save it and potentially use it for something later, like adding back. Or I may end up layering this cattle hide too, which means that I would put in layers of bark between all the folds of the skin and just lay it away, cover it with liquor, and then just leave it and let it work for up to months at a time. It could be like 2 or 3 months. Everything else here, I'm just going to stir. There's no need to look at these sheep hides anymore for a while. They're just going to be like this. This is very strong looking still. The hide tanning has slowed down, and there's plenty of tannin in there, so it may be a while till I need to do anything with this. Besides, it'd be best if I still keep stirring it. And remember, we still have this whole bucket of the strongest liquor from that first cook of that nice oak bark. So there's a lot of tannin in there. Again, if I want to use all that up, that's going to take me a little bit longer to, do that and then get rid of some of that. But if I wasn't wanting to, I would probably start dumping that in right now. But yeah, I like my plan better of getting rid of like a couple gallons of that before I put this in. So since chopping that first batch of bark, I've already got probably as much. Oh wait, I didn't use it all. So, I'm getting close. Like after today, I'll have as much chopped as I already had. And that's so far as all bark that I've taken out of my woodshed. The stuff that's just salvaged out of the wood pile, I'll knock pieces off and throw them in the corner or bucket. And that's probably going to be enough to finish this piece of cattle hide, and then some. I do already have some bark chopped too if I need it, but I've been doing this thing this year where I use an axe or hatchet for at least 10 minutes a day. So for about the last week or so, I've been using that to chop bark for this project. Not very challenging work, but hey, it's time behind a hatchet. If you want to get really familiar with your hatchet, this is a good way to do it. just chop bark, because there is no real substitute for time spent on the butt end of a tool handle to build that kind of like coordination and physical memory that starts to make a tool really comfortable. If you enjoy or can use this kind of content, consider supporting me on Patreon. I do want to do a large-scale micro tannery. I love that contradiction, large-scale micro tannery project, which is about a lot of different things. But we'll talk about that some other time. In the meantime, you know, this video series is a waste of my time in terms of like trying to get any income for that or any other project or anything. It's only by support by other means that I've been able to keep putting out this kind of stuff. And I question the wisdom of doing it at all every time I do one of these videos.